Hello everyone, this is Hakaym and welcome back to some more World of Warships, and today we are taking a look at the Tier 9 USN light cruiser, the Seattle. And, well, let's actually first take a look at the teams, just so you have a general idea of what we're facing. So it's obviously a Tier 9, and we are going to be facing Tier 10. It's predominantly going to be Tier 10 cruisers that we're going to be facing. We're playing on two brothers who are playing Domination. We have a Kerfus, Missouri, Alsace, North Carolina, Des Moines, Worcester, Minotaur, Seattle, Baltimore, Shimakaze, Fletcher, and a Kid. On the enemy team, they have a Kerfus, Iowa, Ismo, Bismarck, two Des Moines, Hindenburg, Buffalo, Cleveland, Hoppadosh, Fletcher, and an asshole. And I am joined once again with a couple of my clanmates. I do have Dread in the Fletcher and Ski Ball in the Missouri. Now let's actually talk about the ship. This ship, it falls in the line as the other USN light cruisers. It is going to be a support vessel. It's going to be relying quite heavily on islands and being able to shoot over them while not being hit. Because compared to the Cleveland, she is a little bit more lightly armored than the Cleveland is. And Cleveland has some benefits that Seattle obviously does not. Seattle's actually a bit bigger. She's a bit bulkier. She has a bigger turning circle radius. She's a slower rudder shift time. She also has not very impressive angles on her guns. So you do have to show a lot of broadside, as you kind of can see there how much broadside you have to show just to get all four turrets off. Now the guns aren't bad. I mean, the guns are the exact same as any of the other USN light cruisers before it. They are 152 millimeters. They have a very quick reload time, about 5.7 seconds. They have a good fire chance, and you do have 12 shells of them. So they're fairly good, but they're almost better at hitting targets at a much further range than what you would really want to be able to hit. For example, that hop rush that you can see, trying to hit that fast pace moving, well, it's not really a destroyer, is it? It's technically a very light cruiser without any citadel. Trying to hit that at long range is definitely a lot more difficult because there's quite a bit of arcing on these shells. But as you can see there, we were being focused on do slide in, and we are obviously being radared by, I believe, either a Des Moines or a Cleveland. I believe the Des Moines is actually currently just southwest of D. So that's another thing. A lot of the USN light cruisers, as I have mentioned, has quite a bit of consumables. It has defensive AA, which is very potent against enemy aircraft. Did switch out its secondaries for the 152 millimeters, so they do have increased range, but not that good of DPM. So that's something to keep in mind. It also has radar. And the radar on this is actually really nice because it's almost the exact same. I believe it is the exact same as your concealment. So as soon as you're detected, you are going to be able to radar. As you can see there, we do have Dread laying down a smoke screen for us, which will allow us to get better shots off on the enemy Hindenburg, which should definitely be helpful. Now the other two are obviously going to be the heal, which is going to make sure you survive a little bit longer, because once again the armor on the Seattle's very, very lightly armored. It's very thin. You will be getting overpenned, which is the nice thing about this, because you will be able to survive what probably would have killed you otherwise, or at least caused great damage. But you still can be citadeled, especially against from other cruisers, so do keep in mind of that fact. Hydro is nice because it just is very beneficial against enemy destroyers. So up close, Seattle is deadly to enemy DDs, so just expect to be killing DDs. Now, one nice thing, and probably one very aggravating thing for any battleship captains out there, is the USN light cruisers are actually really good at just hammering away against enemy battleships. We'll see how much damage we do against this Kerfus later after the battle with our end screen, but he is going to be predominantly our focus. And that's kind of what the US and light cruisers are really good at, is just constantly firing a curve first and getting IFHE, which is a highly recommended skill. Granted, it does reduce your chance of fire, but you're firing 12 shells every 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds at the very most. So you can get those fires, and we just got another fire on that curve first. So he is going to burn for a while. So do keep in mind, you're really good against enemy battleships. Now, enemy DDs at close range, fantastic. Terrifying. I would not want to see a Seattle within 5 to 9 kilometers of me, because I know for a fact that these guns can hit pretty hard, and it does have both hydro and radar, so it makes it very, very strong against destroyers, being able to detect enemy torpedoes or detect a destroyer in a smoke screen. So very strong on that aspect. So destroyer is fantastic. Cruisers, I mean, your best bet is going to be either HE, causing those fires, or at closer range using your AP. Now, the AP, since it is 152 millimeters, isn't as strong and potent as 203 millimeters that you see on the Des Moines or the Buffalo. So there is a slight difference there. So do keep in mind, close range, fantastic, use AP, because your shell trajectory is a lot flatter, and they are obviously lighter shells, so closer range is going to be where you want to be using your AP. But as you can see, just constantly harassing using HE. Now, once again, Seattle does a fantastic job against these enemy DDs, but unfortunately we're just a little bit too far out. Trying to hit a enemy DD is just not really worth it. But this Hindenburg is probably going to go down one way or another. Keeping an eye on the enemy team, just ensure that they don't push around. But you can kind of understand, as I've been saying for multiple videos, this is kind of how the USN cruiser line is going to be playing. This a little bit more, I don't want to say passive, but more of a hold down position, using cover to ensure that you don't get pummeled away. And Cleveland is firing AP at us. Fortunately, we are actually not being detected. Now, our friendly team is actually doing a really good job, completely pushing in from the western side. So they're just gonna essentially create a pincher movement against the enemy team. So things are going very, very well for us, and we're doing decent on damage. We've already done about 95,000 points of damage, and the curve first is once again coming around, and you do have to be careful just to ensure that you don't get hit. Now, it could have been a little bit more aggressive. I will be perfectly well aware, and that probably could have obviously meant we could have done a little bit more damage. But there's actually an enemy Des Moines starting to push into the decap, which I do have to be careful of, because Des Moines can, rightfully so, just completely wipe out a enemy Seattle. So I'm going to actually kind of pull away and just constantly harass this curve first. This curve first, we've probably been a major thorn in his side. But one thing, as I kind of pointed out, is the firing angle. I'm just not a big fan of, because normally I would expect being able, at this angle here, being able to get all 4 turrets on, and there we go, just earned a witherer, which is actually super nice. But the fire angles is quite aggravating, so don't be overly impulsive to get all 4 turrets off. If you do that, you are going to be showing a lot of broadside, and if anyone catches you showing a lot of broadside, you are going to get citadeled and either heavily damaged or instantly deleted. But at this time, trying to be careful, because once again, there is a Fletcher that is, not Fletcher, Des Moines, that is starting to creep up on us. Don't really know what he's, well, technically there's 2 ships on our side, so possibly going to at least see a play, but not against a Seattle, and a Missouri. So this Des Moines not in the best position. And this is a nice thing about having Hydro, is just being able to keep track, especially if a ship does this to you, where you can kind of keep an eye on them. But the enemy teams, unfortunately, is going to lose. We do get another fire on the Iowa, but they are very close to losing right now. So not a bad game, damage wise, not bad. And that is essentially going to be game right here in a moment. But just be aware, this is kind of how you're going to be playing the Seattle most of the time. So yeah, it's an okay ship. So we earned a victory. We brought home 251,200 silver, earned 6,123 XP, and we also earned Witherer. We did 136,168 points of damage, 212 shell hits, 1 kill, and 13 fires. Yeah, that's going to be something common that you see on the Seattle and almost all the US and light cruisers. As far as base XP, we're top of the team, or sorry, second on the team with a base XP of 1,442. Now this is where I think it's just kind of absurd. Most of our damage was against that curve first. We did 105,598 points of damage. HE shells only did 55,618. The fire damage did 80,550. We didn't fire any of the AP. Like I said, close range AP is phenomenal. It is 152 millimeters, so at longer ranges, you're going to be either breaking shells or doing very minimal amount of damage, so do keep in mind of that. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and jump into the port, so I will see you guys there. Alright everyone, welcome back to port, and as I obviously talked about Seattle, actually here's one thing I did kind of forget. I really don't like the middle section. Don't really like the middle section, but that's my only major complaint about the ship itself. But as I have mentioned, it is a different, well, similar and different to the Cleveland in a lot of ways. General idea as far as tactics for compared to the Cleveland, but as far as difference, it's a much bigger ship. It does have some main hindrance with the arcing on the turrets, as well as the rudder shift time and turning circle radius are obviously a little bit bigger. However, let's actually take a look at stats. As far as health points, 43,600 is not bad. That is actually fairly decent for a tier 9, especially a light cruiser. But the armor is thin. One major concern is going to be her citadel. As you can see, does run from the very first turret down all the way to the very fourth turret, and 102 millimeters is not particularly thick. Even with any of the outside layers on, 102 millimeters is something you do have to worry about. Nice thing is you will probably be overpenned. Another aspect is the turrets themselves are very lightly armored. They will probably be penetrated and they can be damaged or destroyed. So do be careful of that. And if you are facing off against a Seattle, I even do this against Des Moines in my Henry. Aim for the turrets if they are showing battle on. If you can knock out one of their guns, it is obviously going to be less damage that is being accruing to you. So do keep that tactic in your mind at all times whenever facing with a bow on target. The bow is the 25 millimeters, which is actually fairly decent. The Buffalo has 27, so the Buffalo does have a little bit thicker bow plating. But for the most part, you're not going to be in a bow in position. You're going to be using islands as much as possible. But if needs be, you can use your bow just to protect. Torpedo protection is only 7%, so not a lot of invulnerability from torpedoes. You are going to eat a lot of damage. Now, as I did kind of point out, the guns are good and bad. Firing arcs are probably my most main complaint. Turning on the guns is a little bit slow, 25.9 seconds. Not particularly the fastest thing in the world. Reload time's decent, 5.7 seconds. Max dispersion is 134 meters. Max HE damage is 2,200 with 11.5 5% fire chance with a max AP damage of 3,200 and a 14.7 kilometer firing range. Now, the 4 triple 152 millimeter guns, once again, really do rely either on the fire that can be placed with the firing of these guns or getting IFHE. IFHE I highly recommend just to actually deal a little bit more damage and actually penetrate thicker armor. One thing you may have noticed is she actually doesn't have any secondary guns. All the main guns that you are going to have is the fact of just the main battery guns. So you have no additional help from your secondaries because she does not actually have any, which goes into AA defense. The AA guns on the Seattle are decent. The mid-range is probably where you're going to be getting most of your damage. It is 4.2 kilometer range. Average damage is 191. The main guns are the basically very similar to how the Minotaur are dual purpose. They are for triple 152 millimeters. Average damage is 90 with a 7.2 kilometer range. So nice range as far as AA. Even if I don't believe I have AFT on this captain as yet. It's still being a work in progress. Don't know if I'm gonna get it, honestly, because that is gonna take a lot of points, but we'll see. So AA is actually fairly decent. Especially with the dual purpose guns, but your mid-range is where you're going to be really doing the most amount of damage. Maneuverability, max speed is 34.6 knots. She's actually fairly quick, which is nice, but her turning circle radius is a little bit big, 750 meters, and her rudder shift time is decent, 6.9 seconds. It's a little slow compared to obviously the Cleveland, but that's usually what happens with these higher tier ships, is you just get a reduced rudder shift time and bigger turning circle radius. So not the worst thing in the world, but somewhat maneuverable, and if needs be you can definitely use that to your advantage. Concealment is nice. Concealment by sea is 9.4 kilometers, makes her fairly stealthy. By air is 6.9, and you can actually turn off your AA guns very similar to how the Atlanta is, and allow the AA ships or the airplanes to get a little bit closer before turning it back on and actually dealing a little bit more damage, giving the CV less time to actually react to your presence. While firing in smoke is 5.9, so that's actually really super nice, and using smoke screens is extremely beneficial for the USN light cruisers. Moving on to the upgrades, I would probably go for range just to get the increased range. Obviously, this is very beneficial, ensure that you have more of a buffer between being detected and being able to open up. And also firing behind islands is going to be better suited with that much longer range. As far as upgrades, as far as consumables, as I mentioned, she does have defensive AA, which is super nice. Radar, the radar does have a range of 9.45 kilometers. So there's a slight difference between your concealment, but it's very, very similar. So as soon as you're detected, you can pop that radar. So that is very beneficial. The action time is not very long, 35 seconds. So you can get roughly about 5 shots off. So fairly decent there. You can obviously get the special upgrade to the radar, so you can lengthen that out. I don't believe I have it on this ship yet, but I will eventually get it. Repair party as usual, and hydro is the normal cruiser hydro, 3.27 kilometers for torpedoes and 4.68 kilometers for ships. As far as upgrades, I have gone for the buff for the AA, because once again, Seattle is really good as far as a AA ship. So having this buffing your AA definitely does help your friends, and using your defensive AA whenever possible to help ensure shooting down or dispersing bombs and torpedoes. So recommend it. But as far as everything else, very, very similar. I have obviously gone for steering gears mod 2. This will reduce your rudder shift time, makes her a little bit more maneuverable. So very beneficial, especially if you are caught out in the open ocean. You can at least possibly dodge some salvos incoming towards you. And then lastly but not least, main battery modification 3. Reduce your reload time, but it does increase your turret traverse, so do keep in mind this will make it a little bit slower, and it was already slower compared to the Cleveland when you first get her. As far as my captain, which I just now realized is Archibald Paul, interesting name, is only a 14-point captain, so he does not have everything as of yet. I have priority target. I do have adrenaline rush. I opted out of the expert marksman just because, well, once this captain is going to be going up to the Worcester, so it's not really necessary for expert marksman. Demolition expert, just to increase that fire chance after getting IFHE, which I highly recommend. And then concealment expert, and it is debatable whether or not to get concealment expert first or IFHE. It is probably up to you. IFHE will ensure that you possibly can get more damage, but without, and granted they do have a much lower concealment than most other cruisers. Concealment expert will ensure that you are obviously a little bit more stealthier and less likely to be taken out when you are very first spotted. As far as other captain skills, you could definitely go for superintendent. You could even go for basics firing training, just buff your AA. Just really depends on the amount of points you're wanting to spend. This captain's still a work in progress, so it's really up to you. But IFHE having this fourth skill, or the second skill with 4 points, really does eat up a lot of points, so you do have to keep in mind if you do go for this, it is going to reduce any other potential captain skills that you could have gone for otherwise. But anyways, this is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, hit the like and subscribe button. You guys have a great and fantastic day. Zaijian.